Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this webinar on the graphics editing of Cscape 10. We'll go straight into it, and if you have any questions, you can put them in at any point.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Today we will look at graphics editing in Cscape 10. Let's look at our agenda for today. We will look at the new graphics editing features in Cscape 10 for all modern OCS models. These include creating and naming screens, editing screens and tabs, the graphics toolbar and graphics toolbox, tools for selecting and aligning objects, clip art, and symbols. There will be demonstrations throughout, and we will finish with a Q&A session. Before we open Cscape 10, we will look at which OCS models can use these graphics features. Any OCS model with a screen can use the Cscape 10 graphics editing features, including the XLE and the XLT, the Micro OCS, the XL Series, the XL Prime Series, and the upcoming Canvas series. You can also access these features with non-screen models, such as the RCC, if you use WebMI in your project. Now let's look at the graphics editing features in Cscape 10. We will start by creating a new program by selecting the Quick Menu button in the top left corner, and then selecting New. The type of logic you choose for your program won't affect your access or use of any of the graphics editing features. We will select Variable-Based Advanced Ladder for this demonstration. Now we have created our new program, which is completely empty. Before we look at graphics editing features, we will look at which OCS series are supported by Cscape 10. We will select Hardware Configuration, and as we are currently not online with the controller, we will select the default controller, which is an XL4 from the XL series. If we look at the drop-down list here, we can see which series are supported by Cscape 10. There are less options available here than for Cscape 9. This is because the series that are now obsolete have been removed from the list. So we now primarily have the Micro OCS series, the XL series, the XL Prime series, and the upcoming Canvas series. We also have the RCC series, which don't have a display on the controllers, as well as Web Designer, which is for WebMI projects that aren't controller-centric. Finally, we have the upcoming and not yet available OCS.io CPU series. For our demonstrations today, we will select the XL Prime series and an XLW controller. Now we have our controller selected, and we will next look at editing screens. By default, similar to Cscape 9, we have a logic section created called Main. We will create a graphics screen from the project navigator on the left. From here, we will select User Interface and expand this using the plus icon, and then select Main Screen. Then we will right-click this and select New Screen. When we create a new screen, it will automatically be given a default name of the screen number. So Screen 1 is the default for the first screen. If you choose to rename the screen, you will be able to use that screen's number in case you want to call the screen in Logic. We will call this screen Main Menu. Once we name our screen, we can see that we still have the screen number in brackets after the screen name. Once we create a screen, it appears in a tab next to our main Logic tab. One of the biggest changes in graphics editing in Cscape 10 is that editing is now done in tabs alongside the Logic editing tabs, so you can easily switch between your Logic editing and your screen editing tabs. You can also have multiple screen tabs open at once. Now that we have our screen editing environment set up, we will look at the features available in more detail. On the left, we have a screen editing toolbar with a variety of different options available. For example, if we want to adjust the zoom on our screen, we can do this using the zoom in and zoom out controls. If we want to change the background color, we can do this from the Set Background option. These are standard graphics supported by our XLW Prime controller, so our choices for the background are either a solid color or a gradient. With the upcoming Canvas series, you have more options for your background, such as using images or patterns. For our screen background, we will opt for a solid color and choose white. For snapping on and off the grid, we can use the Toggle Small Grid and Toggle Large Grid options. If we are using multiple screens in our program, there are different ways that we can access these screens. One way we can do this is by using the previous screen and next screen buttons. In the editing toolbar, we also have cut, copy, and paste controls. We can also move selected graphics to the front and back. We can insert comments, which can be used to document your project or while you are doing screen editing. As well as this, there are error checks, so you can check your screen for errors. We also have an undo and a redo button, and finally, we have the operator simulator. So if you want to see what a button is going to look like beyond its default position, for example, you can use this feature to simulate it on your screen. So these are the options in our editing toolbar. We can access even more options by right-clicking inside of our screen area. When we do this, we have options such as setting your grid. So if you want to adjust your grid, not only the snap, but also the dimensions of your grid, you can do that here. We can also adjust our screen zoom from here, or go to a particular screen. We can also set this screen as the default or initial screen. By default, screen 1 is the initial screen, so we don't need to do this here. We can also assign this screen to a group to categorize our screens. You can also import a group of screens from here. For example, you may have created a screen group in the past that has a set of objects that you want to use for your current project. You can also insert a symbol graphic from the symbol library on your screen as an image, as the symbol library is supported in Cscape 10. Next, we will look at the project toolbox to the right of our screen editing area. The project toolbox feature is also in previous versions of Cscape. However, it was strictly a logic editing tool. Now in Cscape 10, there is a graphic-related version of this feature. So when we are in a screen tab, we will have the graphics toolbox here. And when we switch to a logic tab, we have a logic toolbox instead. We will return to our screen editing tab and look at the graphic editing project toolbox in more detail. First, we will look at fixed objects. These graphic objects are not new to Cscape. These are the same standard graphics objects supported in previous versions of Cscape, available from a different tool. Once again, there are further options available here with the upcoming Canvas series. We will start with the text label and drag and drop a text box onto our screen. When we double-click this, we can change the content of the text box. We can also change the orientation of the text, as well as the font and font size, and the color of the font. So these options are similar to previous versions of Cscape with standard graphics. We can also import images from this menu. We will do this once again by dragging and dropping a box onto our screen and double-clicking it. We will select the maximum number of colors here. We will also opt to retain the original size, and then we will select our image. We will select this JPEG file here. We can also choose if we want to treat the background as transparent, and if we want the image scaled to fit the screen. We will leave the image as its original size. So once again, we have the same graphics tools available from previous versions of Cscape, but now instead of being on the top of the graphics editing area, they are organized into this toolbox. We also have various shapes available here, so this is the fixed object section of the graphic project toolbox. Next, we have live text data. This includes the numeric data fields, which we will add to our screen now. Once again, we have very similar settings here to what is available in previous versions of Cscape, allowing for a smooth transition to Cscape 10 when it comes to graphics editing. We will right-click and select Delete to remove this data field from our screen. As well as the numeric data field, we also have text table, ASCII, timer, time and date data, password data, and recipe table options. So this is the live text data section of our toolbox. Next, we have our live graphic data, which includes display objects such as indicator lamps, bar graphs, and meters. Most of these options are also available in Cscape 9 and earlier. Then we have touch objects. These include objects that have an action when they are interacted with, such as a switch or a button, a selector, a slider, screen jump, menu, notepad, removable media manager, and recipe editor function. We will add a button to our screen here the same way as before, and double-click to look at our dialog box settings. By default, we have a standard button. We will change this to a round button. We will also look at our indicator properties. Here we can set and change our buttons on color and off color. For example, we will set the buttons on color to light green and the buttons off color to dark green. To complete this button, we will have to assign a variable to it, or we can select cancel and return to the button's default settings, which we will do here. We will again right-click and delete this button from our screen. After the touch object section, we have a new section here called clip art. Earlier, we imported a standard image onto our screen. Cscape 10 also supports the symbol library and now supports clip art. Clip art is included with all versions of Cscape 10. When we expand the section, we can access hundreds of clip art images to use in our project. For example, if we expand barrels and tanks, we get many different clip art images to choose from. We will add the barrel new clip art to our screen. There are a few ways that we can do this. We added the image by selecting the barrel new clip art and then dragging it to the size we wanted. If we want to add the image using its default size and proportions, we can simply click and drag it onto our screen and then resize it as we want. We have many other clip art categories and options to choose from, such as barrels and tanks, gas cylinders and additional types of tanks, ductwork, and pipes and valves. We will add the 180-degree connector pipe here by clicking and dragging the image onto the screen to get its default size and proportions, and then we can resize it from there. As well as these, we also have many options for other types of equipment, such as silos, tanks, motors, and pumps. So in most cases, you should be able to find the image you need for your project, either in the clip art section or the symbol library. Finally, we will look at some new tools for selecting and aligning objects. With Cscape 9 and earlier versions, you had a special lasso tool if you wanted to select multiple objects simultaneously. In Cscape 10, instead of having to select a special lasso tool, we can click and drag our mouse around the objects we want to select. Once we have all the objects selected, we will right-click and select Delete. To demonstrate our new Align tool, we want to have a series of 5 barrels of this size exactly in line and distributed evenly across the middle of our screen. We could use the grid to do this, but the easiest way to do this is by copying this barrel image, and then using keyboard shortcuts, we will paste this image 4 times. So now we have our 5 barrels, and we want to have these evenly distributed across our screen. We will position our first barrel on the left of our screen, and our 5th barrel on the right. The other 3 barrels will be lined up at the top of the image and distributed evenly over the distance between the first and last barrel. So we will select all of our objects by dragging our mouse over them, then we will right-click and select Align Objects. Here we have a few different options as to how we want our objects aligned. We will choose to align them to the top, which will align them to the topmost object, which happens to be our first barrel on the left. So now our barrels are aligned with the first barrel. We will reselect our objects, and we will select Align Objects, and this time we will select Distribute Horizontally, so they are evenly spaced from left to right. Now we have lined up and distributed our barrels evenly using our new alignment tool available in Cscape 10. We can also choose to group our objects, which allows us to move and position our objects together. So you have many new editing tools and features available in Cscape 10, regardless of whether you are using a controller with advanced graphics, such as the upcoming Canvas series, or you are using a controller with standard graphics, like the rest of the OCS controller lines. That concludes our webinar for today. Thank you so much for listening, and the Q&A session will begin shortly. Hello.
Okay, we did have one user that has had some audio issues, so we will look into that. But if anyone else is seeing the same, please let us know so we can adjust whatever needs to be adjusted. So following this, we are going to continue with our Cscape 10 trend of webinars, and they are going to be weekly for the coming weeks. You can see my screen there now, so you can see what's coming up. And all the registration links are there also. Failing any last minute questions, I think that is it for this morning. Nice short and sweet one. Okay, I don't see anything else coming in currently. Okay, thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you next week again.